It is Thursday, May 16th, 2024. This is another edition of Baseball Today presented to you by our friends over at Factor. That is my man, Trevor Plouffe. I am Chris Rose, producer Dan along for the ride as well, and so too is intern Tommy. Welcome to the crew for the rest of the summer. All right, Plouffe, we've got our Factor question of the week. We'll be using that on Friday's show, so everybody's got to get them in. Last week I told everybody, you had a bunch of really, really good ones. I had to narrow it down to one. That was a fun question and answer session. So get it in by tonight so that Plouffe can have the words fall out of his mouth and you could say, Trevor Plouffe answered my question. That'll make him a superstar in their neighborhood, won't it?
I don't think so, Chris. I'm not really sure they care about a micro celebrity YouTuber, but maybe.
Is that how you define yourself these days, a micro celebrity YouTuber?
Yeah, that's what I tell everyone. Hey, guys, what do you do for work? I'm a micro celebrity YouTuber. How you doing? Excuse me? Can't hear you, Rose. Live television. This is what happens sometimes, people. Nope.
You still can't hear me? Oh, for goodness sakes. All right, hold on. I'll be there in a minute. Hello, hello, hello.
Yes. Now you're back.
Okay. Yeah. So my computer's been acting very funny today. So that's on the computer. I'm gonna pull Ron Washington. That's on you, computer.
That's on the computer. 100%.
I did everything right, and that is 1,000% on the computer. I was asking you if you're the most famous YouTuber in your neighborhood.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. There's somebody more famous.
I think there's a lot of them. I see these young kids driving these cars, like YouTuber, gamer, something weird like that. We had one. I don't want to get into this. There's more. Yes.
All right. Let's get into our show. Start off with a tip of the cap, and I love this one. Torey Lovello. He has asked his former minor league teammate with the Buffalo Bison back in the mid-'90s and current Cincinnati Reds skipper David Bell to be on his all-star staff. Of course, maybe you remember the story that David's younger brother, Mike, he worked for the Diamondbacks for a dozen years. He passed away a few years ago of cancer at age 46. So I love this move. Torey's one of those guys who, as much of a grinder as he is in the baseball world, I think he has a pretty good feel for the landscape that is out there beyond the diamond as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Torey for so long. He's always been, willing to give advice. So he's been a mentor, and like you said, he's cerebral, yet he's grounded in the game. Like I love him, and especially as a manager, I think the Diamondbacks really struck gold with him.
No question. That'll be nice. Now, the only thing is the Reds got to start winning some games to make sure that David's sticking around for the All-Star game. We don't want to have Torey go to the bullpen, the managerial bullpen, too early, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Sorry. I hate to put that in the universe, but
yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe you have to ask that on tomorrow's show. Can you manage or coach if you're not actually a coach? Because then I'll put my hat in the ring.
Oh, I like it. Well, Coach Trev, how great would that be to see you in the National League dugout in Arlington, Texas in mid-July? That'd be awesome.
I'd walk around calling myself an all-star for the rest of my life.
Okay. The Phillies, they continue to roll. They are 23-5 in their last 28 games. They took it to the Mets on a Wednesday. Harper, another homer. Ranger Suarez pitched through the raindrops and was outstanding again. So they are a league best 31-13. But Plouffe, here's something interesting. Only 3 of their 44 games have come against teams that have winning records as of right now. Does that matter to you?
This question has been going around the internet. A lot of people are concerned about the Phillies schedule. And I'll say this, is it as impressive going 31-13 against that schedule? Probably not. But at the same time, what do we say when teams get to quote unquote soft spots in the schedule? You got to go out and dominate it. That's exactly what they've done. Like, how are we holding this against the Phillies? They're taking care of business, Chris. Third in OPS, second in WHIP. Like, they're going to go out and get Mason Miller. This is a very, very good baseball team.
Hey! Can you stop? You can't just.
I'm sorry.
That. Yeah.
Oh, really?
You just slid that back. You're like, oh, they're going to get Mason Miller. You can't.
Somebody's going to get him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Okay. Let me get back to the question, or the answer, I guess. You can't hold it against them. You should actually applaud them for what they've done. Like I said, they went out and taken care of business. Okay. Like, again, would it be great if, they won the series in March against the Braves, we'll be talking about this team differently. I don't know, man. All I'm saying is they've done exactly what they've needed to do. And I guarantee when we look up at the end of the season, they're either going to be at the top of the NL East, or they're going to be one of the first wild card teams. It's a very good baseball team. I'm not going to sit here and take anything away from them because of the schedule that they play. These are all Major League Baseball teams with Major League Baseball players. They face some really good starting pitchers. They've done everything that they needed to do. So I'm not holding it against them. In fact, I'm applauding them because, like I said, they've taken care of business, Chris.
Plus, some of the teams that they have already beaten, you expected to be better. That's not their fault. Like, part of the reason those teams aren't as good is because the Phillies have been whooping up on them. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. It's if you play 700 baseball, which is what they have done through 44 games,
It's crazy
against teams like this, and you play 500 baseball against good to elite teams, let's say.
Are you doing math right now?
I am.
What's it going to be?
It's not going to be 600 because you're not going to play 81 games against crappy teams and 81 games against good to great teams. It's going to be you're going to play 95 to 100 games against teams that are average and worse, and you're going to play the rest. I just don't think there's that many good teams in baseball.
Okay.
I think really, let's be honest. If we're going to say right now, this isn't today's episode, but how many teams legitimately have a shot at the World Series? Those are teams that I would classify as good to great.
I would say if you're asking that question right now, Chris, and I'm not looking at any standings or anything, I'd venture 12 playoff spots.
But I don't think you can include all 12.
I think you can. I think you 100% can.
I don't.
I mean, you're talking about like who has the best shot. I mean, these teams that make the playoffs, clearly they have a shot at the World Series, Chris.
They do.
I'd say 14 teams.
Oh, well, God. So you think it's almost half?
I do. I really do. I mean, depending on where we're at, like these teams are maybe one move away, something like that.
Now, I know that the argument to back you is that, hey, look who made it to the World Series last year. You had the Rangers, who had to go on the road all over the place in order to make it all the way to the Holy Grail, and the Diamondbacks, who won, I think, 84 games and made it. So, yes, that would back your point. But I think if you were to actually look at all those teams and say, who realistically, because at this time last year, we weren't thinking the Diamondbacks had a realistic shot at making the World Series, even though earlier in the year they had played decent baseball, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that would have meant we were wrong, right?
Yes, but you still wouldn't, with your argument, you would still have the same argument, I think. Like there's
maybe 14's too many. Maybe 14's too many, but
like if I were to ask you today, do you think the Detroit Tigers are a legit World Series contender?
I do not.
Exactly. Now, there is still a possibility they could go on a great run, make it as the third wild card team, win 86 games, and then run all the way to the World Series. There's a possibility of that happening. That doesn't mean that your thinking is flawed when you're laying out who you expect to make it and who you don't, right?
How did we get here? What are we doing? Let's go.
The whole point is that the Phillies have pitched great. They've played great defense, and they've gotten enough hitting. A couple of guys, Bohm, Stott, have been really, really good.
Yeah, Bohm, Stott, and Marsh, like we talk about this quite often on the program. Like you need those auxiliary type players. That's what I'm going to call them. These are very good big leaguers, but like, they're not Bryce Harper. They're not JT Realmuto. They're not Trey Turner. They're the guys that at the top of the lineup, you're like, we know these guys are going to go. When you have the guys towards the bottom start to play like guys at the top, this is what happens.
Okay. All right. Let's move on because there's a little bit where I felt like I got all over the place. I tried to decide who's World Series worthy and who's not today. So anyway, maybe the most interesting part of that Phillies win over the Mets on Wednesday night happened during the game on social media, where there was a tweet out there. Somebody said, hey, let's blow up the whole thing as a Mets fan. And Steve Cohen actually replied to it saying, basically, we can't do anything until the trade deadline. Don't worry, I'm kind of monitoring the situation. Now, that tweet was quickly deleted, but it did come from his account. If this is indeed the case, do you think like it is over for this season in New York?
I sure hope not, Chris. I mean, they're like sitting right there, and I think they're one of those teams we could talk about. Are they legit World Series contenders? We can go back to that discussion. Like, I would say probably not, but this is a team I could see going on a run and maybe doing it. But I asked Jolly Olive about this because I was curious, just a Mets fan's perspective on this. And what he said was he shouldn't have tweeted it, but he said something that everybody already knew. So it sounds like because of a lot of like the players they brought in this year, Martinez, Bader, Minaya, Severino, Adrian Hauser, these guys are all on 1-year deals. Like, I think a lot of fans maybe expected if something like this was to happen during the season where they're kind of middling. They're an average team right now, Chris. If you look at, OPS plus, ERA plus, they're smack in the middle of the big leagues. So I think that's what he's saying. Like, we brought in these 1-year deals. If we're average, we're going to ship these guys out. Pete Alonso, probably going to ship him out as well, try to re-sign him in the offseason, try to recoup everything. Do you know they have $146 million in dead money out this year?
Yes.
Like, this is all of these things. I mean, Cohen came in with an absolute bang, with an absolute heater, Chris, trying to get something done. And now I think he's seeing the repercussions of that and losing. They had that one year, 2022, I think it was, where they won 101 games, lost to San Diego. Then he started to like check himself a little bit. What's the question again? I got off on a tangent.
The question is, do you think we're great? We're really focused. I think we need to take some Adderall before we do this show. Is he about to blow up the Mets? It's right there on the screen. I think you ever get confused. The questions are right there on the screen.
It is right there. I hope he doesn't, but it sure seems like that's kind of the plan right now. Unless Chris, they go on one of these runs. I mean, they're one game out of the third wild card spot. Like, I say this a lot. I've said this a lot this year, and people get mad when I say it, but like, there's not a lot of great teams at the end of like the playoff tier in the National League. Like, they could definitely like make the playoffs this year. But I think what Steve's thinking is, do we have, like you said, a realistic shot at winning the whole dang thing without going and spending prospect capital and bringing more people in? So I think he's thinking, you know what, let's go shoot for this 2025 season, 2026 season, as we kind of get back under the tax thresholds, recoup some prospects, and kind of do it, quote unquote, the right way. I don't know, Chris. I hope they don't.
Well, so the right way, the one thing that has always stuck with me from Steve Cohen's introductory news conference was the fact that we want to be the East Coast version of the Dodgers. And part of the reason that the Dodgers have worked so well, and we've talked about this all the time, is that when they get banged up or they have to get rid of somebody, they've got guys they can call on and slide in seamlessly, whether that's as an everyday ball player, somebody out of the bullpen, or somebody out of the rotation. They just don't miss guys. And yeah, sure, is it nice when they can spend $1.2 billion in the offseason? Of course they can. But you know who else can do that? The Mets. They just can't get it right to the point where they don't have the foundation of the building laid. They're
trying, though. They're building up the minor leagues. They're changing the way they do things in the minor leagues. So, yeah, they're going to get there, hopefully.
And that's why they have that $146 million of dead money, because they were willing to eat all of that money on Scherzer's contract, on Verlander's contract, on David Robertson's contract, so they could get better prospects. And I think that is what he's talking about. Like, we can't do anything until the deadline because we're going to eat some money. We're going to try and get better prospects, and we're going to build this thing up. It hasn't worked out the way I thought it would so far through the first 4 years or however long he's actually owned the team. But we're getting there.
Yes, I agree. And I think that he's not in it for he's in it for the long run. This guy wants to own the Mets for forever, for as long as he can. So he's understanding, like, okay, let's get like the system in place, and then we can go out and spend on free agents when we have, like you said, the depth and the farm system and the coaches in the minor leagues that are getting all these guys ready for the big leagues. Then we supplement with free agents. I know the Rangers didn't supplement. They went out and freaking spent in free agency, and it got them a World Series. But I think that's the anomaly. I think most teams supplement with free agency and not necessarily build a whole team with free agency. It's very difficult to do that.
But then at the end of the season, who's the 21-year-old that they brought up and ended up hitting third in their postseason lineup? And
true.
So they do supplement here and there. But yeah, they were big spenders. They went after it. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story here, Plouffe. this morning, about 8 minutes before the show, I take Sydney. I have to carry her downstairs. Remember, she had back surgery, so she still can't go down the stairs. So I got to carry her up and downstairs every day. I take her downstairs. What's the first thing she does? She ran over to the fridge. You know why? Because the only thing she loves more than her dad is the farmer's dog food. She loves it. When we put it into her diet like 8 to 10 months ago, her life changed. It is dog food that is developed by vets, made fresh from real meat and veggies. It is portioned for your dog, and it is delivered right to your door. So what does that mean? You kick the kibble aside. You get rid of that goop in a can. You are feeding your dog something that is healthy for them. It gives them a better coat, better skin, better breath, makes their poops better, and makes them happier and excited when it is chow time. It is smart, healthy pet food that comes portioned for them, and it is made specifically for them. So all you have to do, it's very simple. It takes less than 5 minutes. Head on over to thefarmersdog.com. You fill out this questionnaire, the simple stuff. How old's your dog? What sort of breed is it? How much exercise does it get? And what does it usually eat? And how much food does it want every day? Well, obviously, it wants a ton, but how much do you feed it every day? And boom, all of a sudden this box shows up at your door. It's these frozen packets that actually has your dog's name on it. So, it feels like it's there. You put it in the freezer, and about 24 hours before you need to open a new pack, you just put it in the fridge and it thaws out. So once again, it doesn't matter if your dog is old or young. It's always the right time to begin investing in their health. Keep your pooch healthy, and you're going to get 50% off your first box at thefarmersdog.com/today. Plus, you get free shipping. Head on over to thefarmersdog.com/today. Half off, free shipping. That's a big deal because that's a big-time box out there. All right. Speaking of being hungry and feasting, Aaron Judge has just been demolishing the pitchers in Minnesota and around the American League ever since he got ejected. Last night, 467-foot home run, part of a 4-for-4 night for him. But was his blast more memorable than Willie Castro's gaffe in which he forgot how many outs there were when the bases were loaded and just one out? He catches a line drive and the Yankees tag up and score the run. He forgot to throw the ball home in time. And then at the end of the inning, when he got a hold of a baseball, he ended up, boom, basically launching it out of the stadium. So what was more memorable, seeing that or seeing Judge's epic blast?
I think more people are going to want to hear me talk about Willie Castro than Judge's shot. Nice homer, Aaron. You're a stud. What else can I say about you? Willie, man, I think people forget he's not a typical center fielder. He's a legit utility player who's filling in center field and doing a very, very good job. I know if you've just been watching this Yankee series, it hasn't been great. He lost one in the sun, misjudged one. He's taking some bad routes out there. But by and large, he's played really well kind of wherever you put him. He's filled in for Carlos Correa at shortstop. He's played pretty much every position that you can play. So I want people to remember that when they're talking about Willie Castro. Like, he's not a primary center fielder, but he does a good job wherever he goes. It's been tough for him, and I've never seen him frustrated like that. If you've ever been around Willie Castro, ever seen him, it's only smiles. He's happy to be at the ballpark every single day. He's a great teammate. It was very, very out of character for him to turn around and throw the ball up there like that. And I was thinking, I was like, man, like, would they probably would have sent Glaber anyway on that Volpe sac fly. And then I realized that Juan Soto was coming up next, and they probably wouldn't have sent him, and they would have let him hit with bases loaded. So it was difficult to watch, but I can't sit here, Chris, and say say, bad job, Willie. You want to know why? Because I did the same thing in the big leagues. In Anaheim, I was playing second base, ground ball, double play. Kevin Sloy, I believe, was on the mound. I take the throw at second, step on the bag, and kind of put my head down, start running to the dugout. I look up, and nobody else is running to the dugout, and then I realize, oh, I messed up. So it happens from time to time. It looks horrible. You never want to see it, but it is kind of part of the game. And I feel bad for Willie, and don't judge him on this series alone.
How would you like to be the person walking outside of Target Field and all of a sudden a baseball comes zinging? Because you're not like, well, nobody's going to be hitting one that far. So for him to have thrown it, pretty impressive.
Yeah, he threw it up there. Actually ricocheted off like a sign in right center and then went out. And I don't know if people were, I don't think people would like be on him so much and he'd get so mad that he'd throw the ball at somebody. Some
Oh,
people have suggested that on social media. I believe that was just pure frustration and
yeah.
just let it eat.
We've seen people throw baseballs into crowds before. It's not. I don't suggest doing it. And by the
No.
way, when you're not alone and Willie's not alone, there is a Hall of Famer named Larry Walker who has probably the most famous gaffe of how many outs there are. I think it happened at Dodger Stadium when he was with Montreal. And right field line, he catches a ball. He gave it to, he's running off the field. He tossed it to a fan, went back, pulled the ball out of the fan's hand, and threw it back.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's probably the most.
It shouldn't happen in today's game. I could see it like back in the day when the scoreboard was just in one place and maybe you didn't see it. Now like there are screens everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's
so it shouldn't really be happening, but it does.
See, you should have, with all the coaches you have on staff now, there should be a little league coach, and the little league coach. All right, guys, one out, plays at any base, and if you catch it in the air in the outfield,
you do that as a big leaguer. What do you see the guys all the time? Hey, 2 down, 2 down, 2 down. It just happens sometimes. You just get caught up in it. I don't know, man.
Hey, by the way, in the chat, Baseball Road Tripper says, please don't bring up the Twins being 44 and 119 against the Yankees since 2002. Baseball Road Tripper, I would never think of doing that. I would never.
Who has the most recent playoff series win?
Oh, you mean overall, not against one another? Because we know
just overall, just last year. That's what happened.
Yeah. Well,
now
one team.
Hey, I'm happy for the Yankees. You won a World Series 15 years ago.
By the way, look out for Aaron Judge. Seriously, his numbers are sick ever since
he's nasty.
Ever since he got ejected for the first time in his career. And oh, by the way, look at his OPS. He's within 20 points of Juan Soto, who we've already coronated as the AL MVP this year.
Did we really think like he was going to be a bad player? Like, did people like think that?
No, nobody thought. Producer Dan chiming into our ears. I know you can't hear him. He said some people did think that he was going to be.
He didn't say that.
Well,
he said some idiots did, which I agree with him. If you said that, you are an idiot.
Let's move on. Pair of heroics from catchers on Wednesday. Adley Rutschman, a come-from-behind walk-off homer against the Toronto Blue Jays, just got out at Camden Yards, which means they've now gone 105 consecutive series without being swept. They were that close to being swept. Meanwhile, in Milwaukee, William Contreras hit one of 5 Brewers homers to keep Milwaukee in first place. Both catchers, 26 years old. You can only keep one to build around. As I was writing this is the one where I knew you were going to be shaking your head and telling me how much you hate me and you want to MF me and all that sort of stuff because you hate this question. You can only take one to build around. Who is it?
I do hate this question. I'll tell you why, because it's a good one. These guys are so similar. I was going through everything, and initially I was like, you know what? Adley's a switch hitter. I'm going to take Adley. But the thing is, Contreras doesn't have any splits against, or he hits both sides really well. And in fact, he hits left-handers better than Adley does. So it's like he almost has the better splits between the two. Then you go look at a contract situation. They're both free agents at the same exact time. And then you look at like defensive statistics, like they're both really good. This year, they're both down a little bit, but I'm sure by the end of the year, they'll be exactly where they need to be. They can hit, they handle the pitching stabs. I think one thing that goes Contreras' way is he catches more. So I think like that's something you talk about, but I want both of these guys. How can I pick between them, Chris? Really, how can I pick between both of these guys? And here's just some other things you think about. Okay, intangibles. Adley, like him hitting the walk-off homer, they haven't been swept since he's been called up. I love that. I think that's like one of the cooler stats in the game. Now, is that all Adley? Obviously not, but it's still nice to mention. And then you look at the Brewers. They trade away Corbin Burns. A lot of people wrote the Brewers off before the season, but here comes William Contreras having a banger of a season, and now they're sitting at 26-17 in first place in the Central. This is a very, very difficult question. I think I'll go with Contreras because I've seen him get better defensively very quickly, and I think There's more room to grow there. I like that he catches a lot, but like you can't go wrong either way. We are seeing for a while in the big leagues, there was a golden age of third baseman. When I played, essentially, like it started, like the third baseman became, it wasn't like a big bruising corner infield guy. It was like some athletic dudes were over there hitting bombs, playing good defense. And the catcher position now, I think, has that crown. I think we're seeing a real golden age of catchers, guys that can hit, guys that can catch and throw. Everything is monitored now, framing, blocking, and we're seeing a really, really good crop of guys. So I'm going to say Contreras. I like the brother aspect of it, like kind of bouncing things off his brother as well. But I could just as easily have went Adley. I'm going to go Contreras, though, because I have to answer the question.
Anyway, thank you. You took the long route there, but I appreciate you answering it because I thought for a while you weren't going to. So good work on your part. Good work. I too am going William Contreras.
Okay.
Not by much. Like I play this game. If they both hit free agency after this year, who gets more money?
I don't know.
Who do you think would?
Probably Adley, and I don't even know why. Why?
I don't know.
Switch hitter. That's like the only thing I can think of. But again, the splits they're not out there.
And the number one pick who has certainly lived up to it, sort of stuff. Like,
what does that matter? What does that matter?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I think some people can justify that. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to you, but it might matter to somebody. I don't know.
Against lefties, William Contreras over his career has a 1 dot.
Yeah.
Against righties, 784. Adley, on the other hand, who's a switch hitter, 86. Excuse me, that's wrong. That's also wrong. Where is it? 807 against righties, 838 against lefties. So like great, but I think you take William.
Okay, part of the reason I would take William, I started looking at some of his peripheral numbers. I mean, his exit velo, his expected batting average, all these. There's a thing called blasts. Do you know that? Yeah.
Yep.
Which he is, I think he's number one in the league in blasts. Not just like among catchers. I think he's number one in the league. And so that talks about, I believe, when you're swinging as hard as you can and barreling it up at the same time, which are two different things. So I think you combine that number and that gives you a blast.
Base running value, William is in the first percentile.
Yeah.
So like maybe you go Adley because of that. He's in the 40th percentile. Like this, we're just splitting hairs here, Chris.
Yeah. And well, once again, there's one category we haven't talked about that I thought you would be all over. The hugs.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's your thing. You're a loving guy. You love.
I am a loving guy, but you're talking about a guy to build a team around. I don't care what kind of hugs you give. You can give me a high five if you want. Pat me on the butt.
Can you work with me here? Like have some fun with it? You'd be like, oh yeah, hugs are a big deal when it comes to.
I'm not going to do that because this is a serious baseball show, Chris. And I'm a serious baseball media person. I interviewed Carl Ravitch yesterday.
I know you did. I look forward to watching that and listening to it. It's there forever. By the way, spin your hat around. I don't even know what hat you got on today.
St. Paul Saints, baby.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So we got a last one here. Mets teammates Mark Vientos and Joey Lucchesi, they had to share an Uber from Syracuse to Philly in order to get to their game. Vientos let us in on the experience a little bit.
And how long of a ride was that?
4 hours.
Yeah, from Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of Joey time.
Joey Fuego.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about?
You know what I told him? I was like, you learn a lot about a person being in the car for so long. No, we talked about everything. Just Joey's Joey.
Joey's Joey. So I ask you this. If you had to ride with somebody from work for 4 hours in an Uber, who would you take? And who's the one person you would not want to be seated with? From John Boyd.
I'm going to go 2 and 2 here because the one I'll start with the people I don't want to be with, and that's the We Got Ice guys. There's 2 of them. Jack wears awful socks, and I just can't be around people that wear awful socks. I don't know if people have seen his sock reviews on Instagram. They're some of my favorite content, but that's because I'm looking at it through a screen. If I was next to him and looking at these socks, I might blow up. And then Zoe would be trying to give me hugs all the time. He's so nice. And I'm like, hey, man, like just get away from me. But the people I'd want to do it with, and I have a good one. Robbie Sirocco is going to be driving us. I love Robbie Sirocco. I think he might be my favorite person at John Boy Media. So him and I would talk about golf. And then in the back, I'd have Sarah Tepper. We would just be designing T-shirts, turning this company into a fashion house. So I would go with those two and then leave the We Got Ice boys at home.
It's interesting. Interesting. So you're saying when Zoe he'd be like, hey, Plouffe. So
he'd want to stop and get like candy and play like games and stuff. And I'd be like, hey, man, just let me focus.
Actually, it's oddly enough, well, you named both people that I would be okay with. Robbie's the best. Robbie's been my producer on Rose Rotation since day one. Great dude. On top of that, actually, I want to ride with Jack Doyle. I've always found him fascinating, and I don't think I've ever had like a long conversation with Jack.
Have you tried?
No,
it's very difficult.
Well, that's why I would want to crack the case. I consider myself an interviewer, and so I'd want to get to know him.
You'd get on some weird. If you try to sit down and have a real conversation with Jack, it just goes in very interesting directions.
I'm okay with that. I like learning about people. The person I would have a hard time with, and this is all game time dependent. Okay. If there's a Yankee game going on, I would make it maybe one exit before I threw our producer, Dan Rourke, out the window.
I almost chose Dan as well.
Plus,
it'd be difficult.
Have you noticed how in shape Dan is? Like, he is killing it at the gym. He's been posting some of those where you can see the vein in the biceps sort of stuff. I'm wondering.
Those are called thirst traps.
Yeah, whatever. So I'm curious if he's all like protein all the time. When you get around people who are all protein all the time, they fart like mad. So I cannot sit in a mobile with you for 4 hours if that's what's happening up.
I also have questions about Dan. All he eats is hot dogs, but he's all roped up like that. What's going on, Dan?
So there's definitely some.
What's in those hot dogs?
I don't think we need to get that answer today. Oh, all of a sudden, Rourke is quiet. He won't say anything. He won't say anything. He'll pop in when you talk about.
Taylor, I would sit with Taylor Jackson as well, because then she could help me with my social media and I level up. I'm trying to level up here on a car ride.
Hey, listen, I don't know what's going on with the system.
Not your fault.
It's not my fault. I called for the squeeze computer at some point.
Someone made such a good point about that, Chris. It's called a suicide squeeze. Like, it's not going to work out all the time. It's a difficult play.
Yeah. All right. Don't forget to get your Factor question of the week in by tonight. Okay. Just follow our account, Chris Rose Sports on social media. Send it in. We want to make somebody famous on tomorrow's show. This was a fun one. Always is, except for my computer issues. Wasn't my fault. Was not my fault. So for our one-of-a-kind producer, Dan, and our great intern, Tommy, and the uber-talented Trevor Plouffe, I am Chris Rose. We will see you Friday here on Baseball Today, presented to you by Factor.